right, so in week 4, in our first classwork, we're going to do something a little different again. First, we're going to restructure our directory structures based on month and implement a more app-like development for your version of my CAD app. And then we're going to do some button implementations for doing content or actions. You'll see this in action in a second, well, in a few minutes, and then we'll stage and commit that. Okay, so the first thing, I'll flip over, and I have the shared with everyone directory that's not completely done for all the work, but has a structure that we've been implementing. So what I'm going to have you do first is you right click on the root and you'll add a directory, and it'll be called August. I would recommend keeping those lowercase, and then we'll create another directory called September. Okay, so now, and actually now that I see this, I should have waited. So don't do as I do, do as I say. So we'll go ahead and delete that. And here's why. We're going to delete that because I'm going to have you move all of this, right? Not include, don't include the git ignore or a readme file if you have one. So I'm going to click on the first one, hold shift down, click on the second one. I'm going to move it. I'm going to click drag and I'm going to move it into that August. So when I do, notice it turns red. I'm going to let go. And what's nice is that my editor, in this case, says, hey, guess what? You're going to do all this. You're going to search for any references that it would need to change. We'll just go ahead and click OK. So what that does is inside of that now folder, August, is all the stuff you've created for the month of August. So now we'll go ahead and create another one for September now. Now making sure, right, it's always really important, and I did that a little fast, so really it's always important to make sure you're at the folder above it where you're creating it, the one you want to create into. So I want to be in this root in order to create another folder here. So I'm going to do new folder directory. Yeah, they're called two different things, but generally mean the same, right? Okay. So now here's our new structure. Okay, so what I'm going to have you do here is, now that we have this, we're going to do a new couple, now only 2 directories, I think. It may change, but we'll see. One will be called My App. Okay, and then another one will be called My Homework, because typically the app in this case is more referring to what we're doing in classwork, and then your homework, that kind of makes sense, right? Mine, let me make sure I'm in the right thing, My Homework. Okay, cool. So now what you can do is go up into your August and grab anything out of that CSS that you've created that you want, right? There's ways to do that. You can recreate it. I believe, can you just copy it? Yeah, so it looks like you can just copy it and place it in there. I like recreating stuff because I just think it's cleaner, right? So in here, in the homework, you could recreate your CSS folder, and that's where you could then copy that right into there, right? Copy. So I'm just showing you both ways that you can do it. Where's the paste? Copy, paste. Yep. Cool. So that brings in that structure, and then you can grab also one of the references that you've done on the other homeworks as far as the reference to the CSS file in there if you want. Okay. All right, so that gets us started now with the way, so now that I have this, let me do this now. So now that you have this, what you'll do is for each day, all right, so you'll do new HTML, and so this would be like day 8, because you've already done day 7, so this would be done day 8, and you'll want to create day 7 or place it into this structure. Okay, so we'll do day 8, lowercase d, ay, and then 8, no spaces, right? So that will be within your homework directory, that. Cool. All right, so now we have that implemented. You could go out and do your git staging, committing, and pushing if you want, but I'm going to go ahead and continue on the rest of the work we're going to do. Okay, so now in my app directory, I'm gonna do the normal CSS, right? And the normal right click JavaScript. Cool. And then here, the new file you'll create is called index.html. And yes, lowercase, exactly the way I want it. And click OK, which places it right at the beginning, the root of the My App directory. Okay? Okay, so now that we're here, we are now, we've done a couple of classworks related to various things about app creation, but we're going to take it to the next level now. So what we're going to do here is, now that we've created that, we've set up our app, our CSS, now we're going to actually either select or create. So this is where, if you've taken Todd McLeod's CIT 85, you could go look at where you all ended up with CSS layout, or you could go find some CSS layout out there. I've been really inspired lately by listening to the Web Ahead, which I listen to all the time, but this particular episode right here that talks about future of layout really says layout is about to radically change. The way we've done it in the past is definitely now going to be so old that here are some of the up and coming, and Flexbox was in there, which I really give credit to Todd for foreseeing the importance of knowing how to use Flexbox. And it's not necessarily easy, which is really what I wanted to say about this, is I want you to go find a CSS layout, because the thing is, if you're going to use, and by the way, I've determined I'm going to use the Holy Grail. Now, the Holy Grail, even though I said in class the other day, it's not very many lines, and I'm just going to copy it real quick. What's important to understand, did I copy that? What's important to understand is what it's doing. Because if you use something without really knowing what it's doing, you're going to spend a lot of time trying to just basically figure out what the person who created it knows, which in many cases is a totally fine way to do it. But you have to figure out your level of knowledge and your level of willingness to use something and oh, it's not the right one, but spend your time trying to figure it out. Okay, so when you're looking at, and I definitely recommend CSS, just CSS layout as a Google search, to do that and to figure out, look around, because there are a bunch of things. Again, try to stay away from W3 School a little bit. No offense, W3 School, but some of your stuff is a bit dated. But there's definitely some, and what we want is, we want a CSS layout that's responsive, right? So that's the key term there. And if you want to use Bootstrap, you're totally welcome to do that. Bootstrap has some great layout as well, so if you're used to using with Bootstrap, feel free to do that. Okay, so however you do it, and like I showed you, I'm going to use the Holy Grail here. And I've spent some time getting to know this Holy Grail layout and have a fairly good sense of what it's doing. Let's see if that worked. So now what I'm going to do is, I'm just going to take it and paste it. Oh, I see, I got the old one, so that's okay. So I didn't, right? So in this case, I'm just going to grab this because it's got the right doc type, everything I would need on there. And then we'll just grab that, copy it. Seems like it's, hang on, my keyboard might be acting a little funny here. It is acting a little funny. Yeah, my funny mouse. Anyway, I think I got it this time. I'm going to paste it, and yeah, I can tell that that's it, right? So the thing I would do immediately, all right, so this is it, right? And you can look at it and you can see what it is. I had showed this before. It's a responsive design. It's got a header, a nav, an article, and a side, and a footer. Okay, so what I like again is the fact that it's really beautifully responsive and really lightweight and built on modern concepts of layout. So it's got all the things I want. So the first thing I'm going to do is, the styles up in the head, right? So I'm going to create, and I've already got a directory here, so I'll go ahead and create my CSS called style CSS. And then I'll go back into the index file. Remember, working in WebStorm, your files that haven't been version controlled are in red here. So then I'm going to take just this, all of this, and I'm going to change it, some of it, but right now I'm just going to grab all. Oh, my mouse is having the hardest time today. Okay, so I'm going to use my keyboard. Probably better anyway, actually, to use your keyboard. So I'm going to grab all of this up to the body, and again, remember, the better you know CSS, and I'm going to get it out of there, the better your life is going to be writing JavaScript, because it's really just built on it. So let's do that, right? Good. So now that I have that in there, I'm going to go ahead and make sure in my index file we have, I no longer need this, but what do I need? You should know this, right? So what I need is I need a link, and then my would be CSS dot. And I think I'm going to show you. So control space in the web editor will actually bring up the smart typing, which is basically your autocomplete. And you want to do that because it just makes your life easier, right, to do it this way. So that way you don't have to remember all those things. And all I did there is, as I was typing, after I got to the ref, I knew I was going to have a reference there. So I did CSS, and as soon as I started typing, I did control spacebar. Control spacebar. There it is. And then it's like, oh yeah, it goes out and looks in that folder and knows there's already something. Really, there's only one thing, so it was easy for it to suggest. But if I had done S, it would have done even a better job of filtering only the CSS files with S on them. So it's really good to know how to do that, right? So now we have that, and let me go ahead and set up my new JavaScript file, because we will have that. So let's see, I'm in that directory. I'll call it app.js. Good. In here in my index file, and this is a little review, but it's always okay to do review. Right before here, we'll do script. Right. I did that the other day by accident. It wasn't. And let's do this again, right? So JS, and then I did my, for me, control space does that. You'll see me do this again in a little bit. Okay, so now we have the app set up, and what I'm going to have you do is you can look at some of the stuff you've done in the past weeks, but I'm going to go ahead and do like the next step. But before we do that, there's one other thing. Let's just make sure, actually, here's a good thing to do, is to always make sure, especially when you're just starting, console log, right? I found, right? So I want to say I found it, right? That way I know when I'm looking at this. I'm going to refresh, inspect. And when I do that in my console, cool, I found it, I'm good to go. Right? So I can get rid of that now. Alright, so now that I have those up there, the one other CSS thing I want to have you do is actually called a CSS Reset. It's really good to do a reset, because what happens is, if you know about cascading style sheets, they cascade, they fall, and there is a style sheet built into your browser. So to get started on a kind of wiping that clean, there's something called CSS Reset, and it's just simply some CSS, and I'm just gonna, hopefully my mouse works better, is to copy this, right? And I'm going to, and I'll give you these links, but it's Eric Meyer, who's amazing. Is it Eric? I know it's last name Meyer. Yeah, Eric Meyer has, this is like the most famous CSS code. A lot of people use it to do these CSS resets. Okay, so I'm going to go up here. I'm going to bring in my CSS file here. Oh, wrong one. I don't want this one. Matter of fact, I'm going to clean this up just a little bit, because I like to have only what I'm working on, and just to make my life a little easier here, I only want the stuff that I'm working on. Okay, and that is that stuff right there. Cool. Cool. All right. Okay, so in my CSS file for my app, then what I'm going to do, not for the homework, but for the app, is I'm going to go into the top of it, and generally this is the way you do it. Give myself a space, right? So this would be, then I'd have the reset at the top, And then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put in and I think it's, yeah, so I use the command on the Mac and the / to give me a comment, and I'm going to say flex box wholly from MDN. Okay, so that way I know where it came from, right? Good, cool, right? And then I'll have something else we put down here. So now we have the basis for at least beginning, right? So wherever you choose your CSS layout, put your reset at the top, and then put your whatever you're using for this down here. Okay, cool. All right, so let's see how we're looking here. So localhost, and this should not be any different, but you will actually notice when I hit refresh here, I think a little bit of a difference, because the CSS reset takes away a little bit of that margin, which is nice, puts everything closer in. It's just a good practice, and many people do it, so I want you to have that as well. Okay, so now see this. So now we have the header. I have, again, yours definitely could look the same, but it could look different as well. So one thing I know I like, right, in my body is I don't really like the font that they use. So I'm going to use Roboto because it's one of my favorite. So I'm going to do Google Fonts, Roboto, and I suspect you had done this when you were playing with your app, but if not, you know, you come in here, you look at the different options that you have, light, thin, as far as within the Roboto, but I'm just going to say select this font. Let me make sure I got the right one, right? And it shows you how to embed these. I'm going to customize it because actually what I want is I also want 100. Is it thin 100, I think? Hang on. So in this case, I've selected the family, so I can just hit the reference, right? So I'm going to copy this because this is going to go in your HTML. So I'm going to come back to my editor now. And then in my HTML, where my body section begins after the CSS reset, notice that that standard Holy Grail layout, this was the font that it used. So what I'm going to, wrong one, thank you, sorry, in the HTML, that's right. First I have to put a link to the CSS for Roboto, and then in your CSS, and this actually shows right here, right, then you can just put the font family. And I ended up playing around with this on my own a little bit, and I'll show you what I changed, but I'll show you what it looks like here. So in here, right, I'll just come in here and then go, yeah, I want that in there, right, for now. And let's just show you, so you know, you can see just what that does to the layout is just the text itself. So we have that Roboto, and then I found as I was playing with it, if I would also change some more, because I spent a lot of time playing around, what you will find you will do on an assignment like this, right? And so what I ended up doing was I found that because I really like that thin looking Roboto, and boy, this is where your time dump, you have to really figure out how much time you're willing to spend here, right? So let's see if I got this right. I did font size, and I did a 1.5, and there's something called EM and REM and M, and it's basically based on the font standard size that is set, and it just sets that proportionally, which is just good to do. And then I did, not font weight, and then I'll do font weight. I should be using my smart keys now. 100, right? And let's see if that worked the way I want. And then I like to drop out the background, right? So let's see how that modified for now, because we can move on to our last part here.